All right, bud, let's keep it going. We're going to go to the co-feature. This is a fight where I think a lot of people disagreed with your pick on this one. And a lot of people have been down on Devin Haney since the beating he took. It doesn't count on his record, but he did take the beating from Ryan Garcia. He came back versus Jose Ramirez. It was not a fun fight or a good performance by him. And you made some points in the lead up for this fight, this title fight. It was his debut, 147 pounds. He's fighting Brian Norman, only 24 years old. Brian Norman was the youngest champion in boxing going into this one before Abdullah Mason just became that. And the WBO belt was on the line at 147. And you broke it down, and you went to the past, and you went to your gut, and you ruled out and made sense. And I'll let you touch more on that, of why you liked Haney. But you said from that great show back in the day, will the real Devin Haney please stand up? And Devin Haney stood up. A lot of people are jumping back on that bandwagon that you didn't jump off. You gave him when he was a plus money underdog. I think you touched on it in the opening. You might have changed that line as soon as we came on here and you started speaking. You became a slight favorite, not much of a favorite. In the end, another win. You're on fire. We keep saying it. We're going to show you guys the report. It wasn't close. He dominated. He dropped him in the second round. And then he went on to coast a decision, unanimous decision win. The only thing I didn't understand all night,
judge?
114, 113.
Bring him in all. If I'm the czar, if I'm the boxing czar, there's a national commission. And I don't want to be. I'm not asking. But if I want, first of all,
I want you to be, because you will clean the sport up.
A lot of pink slips would be handed out on Monday. But if I'm in charge of this sport, I've been fighting for a national commission forever and want to go to Congress and get one. But really, I'm calling that judge into my office and give him his day in court before I fire him or suspend him. And make him explain to me how he came up with that. I'll make him watch the fight with me.
And drug test him?
And maybe. And I make him, I want to know what his affiliations are, who he is affiliated with, who he has friendships with, who he has relationships with, what promoters, what this, blah, blah, blah. I want to do a full, there's other guys worse than him, but I don't want any of them. And I want to do a full investigation breakdown of how he came up with that score. And if it don't sound kosher, as they say, to me, you know what? You're getting suspended, and I'm going to watch you. I'm going to keep you out for, probably 6 months and let you do little fights and then see how you do. And if you do better, then I'll let you come back. And if you do it again, you get suspended for maybe a year and a half this time. And then the 3 strikes you out. You get your license revoked. Just like if you're dangerous on the road and you have too many accidents. I got to take your license away. You might kill someone. You might hurt somebody. If you're a bad judge and you keep making those kind of bad decisions, I got to take your license away. You might hurt. You're going to destroy some young fighter's career or some old fighter's career or anyone's career. And you're going to chase fans away. You're hurting the sport. Yep. So I got to take your license away. I'm sorry. So at the end of the day, as far as the fight, how did I come up with Haney? Well, look, there's a lot to it. One of the things first to start with was he was always a good boxer. He was always that guy that I always said, you got to know your identity to be a really good fighter. You got to have talent, and you got to be buttoned up, and you got to be taught right, and you got to have the fundamentals and all that. And whoever has more talent with the fundamentals, they're going to shine. And mentally, you got to be together. He was a champion. Several weight classes, how many weight classes? 2? Whatever, but I think 2, but the last one was 140. There's a guy who's a world champion, and then his father always was smart about the management. They didn't really make any mistakes. I know the Lomachenko fight was very close. A lot of people thought he lost and all that. I get it. I thought it was. But they didn't make many mistakes. He had an identity. He knew what he was. He was a counterpuncher. He was a guy that never wasted anything. He was a sharpshooter, a real accurate, laser puncher. with laser accuracy. And like I said, he didn't waste much. He controlled range. He set traps. He counterpunched. He used his jab. He was fundamentally solid. Some people question his chin, but not his heart. And he got it done by being a practitioner of the sweet science. And then he goes into the Garcia fight. And the Garcia fight just about ruined him. But it didn't. But it almost did. And he goes into that Ryan Garcia fight, and him and his father, the first time they made a mistake. And I might have made the same mistake. And I'll tell you what that mistake was. They believed all the stuff that was going on, which we all did. Where on the internet, on the social media, where Garcia was acting like a guy that you almost wanted to commit, to an insane asylum. Where, really, if you cared about the human spirit and the humankind at all, you started to say, should this kid be in the ring? With this crazy stuff that was twirling around his life in the middle of getting ready for a huge fight. And it turned out that Garcia got in the ring. He was together enough to fight a hell of a fight. And where it really went crooked for the Haneys was, I think that they thought, like a lot of people, because of all the stuff out there, they were going to have an easy night. They were going to kind of go across the ring, get rid of this guy that's been nuts, and go home and pick up their check and go home. And they made a mistake. But they went away from what got them there. That night, they wanted the counterpuncher. They wanted the guy that controls range, the guy who's a sharpshooter, the guy who doesn't waste anything, the guy who's laser accurate. They became Mike Tyson. They became more of a seek and destroy guy, like, we're going to go get him. And that's not him. And he did. He went to get him. And he walked into a left hook. And he never fully recovered. And then he got dropped another 2 times or whatever, 3 all night. And he showed tremendous heart to survive. Tremendous. But he took a beating. And he took a bad beating. And he took such a bad beating that a lot of people thought he would never be the same. A lot of people. And not only physically, but mentally. And then he did the right thing. He took a long time off to recover. Long time. Took a good amount of time off. His father did the right thing. And then he came back. That fight in outdoors that Turkey Al-Sheikh put together.
Times Square.
Yeah. And he comes back and he fights a fight with a former champion who's past himself, who's a little past himself, a little slow and, coming in one-dimensionally, but a former champion. And he pitches a shutout, but a lot of people didn't like the way he looked because he was very defensive and they thought he was shot. Maybe physically, but definitely mentally. And they thought he was shot. And I watched that fight. I watched it again because now I'm breaking fights down for our community and everything else. And I watched it and I said, is he shot? I had to answer questions to myself to handicap it right. And I said, he's physically fine. I watched his legs, I watched his reflexes, his defense was good, his counter-punching was good, was on, his control range, his legs, everything was good. He didn't put the offense together because he wasn't back with his confidence yet. But he needed that fight to get back. That was the fight, that was the medicine that the doctor ordered. That was what he needed. He needed to get through that fight to know he was okay. To just know he was okay. For his father to say, son, you're okay, you're back. And he needed to do that. And again, I looked at the physical, I said, he's fine. And I took a shot. I said, I think that fight was all he needed. That was the fight to get him back, to get his confidence back. I think it's going to work. And then I looked at the opponent. And at the beginning, Norman was the favorite. Everyone said Norman's going to knock him out. Well, a lot of people were saying Norman's very dangerous, going to knock. Explosive kid, young kid, champion, undefeated, very good fundamentally, but very, very talented and a good puncher. And he scored those left hook knockouts and all the, the sensational highlight reels of knockouts. And everybody was sold. Haney's shot. Norman's probably got a good shot to knock him out. And I thought to myself, just the same way as Haney's people made a mistake going into the Ryan Garcia fight, thinking the guy was gone. Maybe, just maybe, I think they could do a great job, Norman's people. But just maybe the young kid, they make a mistake a little bit, and they think they're going to just walk him down, go after him, land a big shot, and get rid of this guy who didn't look spectacular in his last fight. And I thought if they do that and become a little one-dimensional and a little overly aggressive, and Haney's back to being who he is, which I was sure his father would have him back to knowing his identity now. That we're a counterpuncher, let the other guy make mistakes, let's pick him apart, that's control range, that's set up good shots, that's not, let's be us. If they're that guy, they're going to have a chance to catch this young kid coming in. They're going to have a chance to outbox him. They're going to have a chance to set traps, to counterpunch, to keep more balance, to play defense and mix offense. They're going to have a chance to win and get back to the top. And it played out the way that I handicapped it. It really played out that way. And I said, while we were watching it with our crew, with the live streaming tonight, I said, he's got to get past the first 3 or 4 rounds. He's got to get past these rounds, and he's got to gain confidence. And if he does that, he's back on the horse. He's going to ride it home. And what happens? He scores the knockdown, and it was beautifully scored at the right range, catching him, coming in front of him. And what did he catch him with? Before that, he caught him a nice left hook that kind of, put him in his place a little bit. And then what did he do? He threw the left hook, and I don't know if it was a throwaway punch, but it was blocked. He threw the left hook, I think as a throwaway, and then the right hand down the middle. But the left hook froze him. It distracted him. It set up the right hand, and it dropped him. And then it was his fight. He was back. He was confident. He was Haney. He was controlling the outside. He was back being what he needed to be. And he's back.
He's back. He's back in a big way. And he got that confidence in the second round when he scored that big knockdown. He started to coast. And I thought maybe will he allow Norman to get back in the fight. But the thing that shocked me the most from all the other people out there listening to some of these breakdowns in the comments in the lead-up was they were discounting the experience factor or the lack of experience with Norman. And just getting carried away by the knockouts and the most recent impressive performances. And hey, not to say that Norman won't be back and won't do special things, but experience doesn't matter, and there is levels to it. And Haney's experience showed he was on a different level. It wasn't close. I don't know what that 114-13 was again, but just want to say that. We'll see what's next. But Ryan Garcia announced this week he signed on. He's fighting Mario Barrios. He's gonna go fight for that 147-pound belt that Barrios retained against Manny Pacquiao. And
he's going to try to land the left hook.
Yeah, so if Garcia gets past that, maybe we get the grudge match, Garcia and Haney.
Yeah, that would be a pretty big fight because of obviously the first fight. And it would be interesting. And it would be scrutinized more, obviously, as far as weight. Having to make weight, maybe a weight clause of whatever, but definitely would be scrutinized. They'd have to make weight and scrutinized, of course, because of the PED issue that came up. And I'll finish with this, to what you just touched on, and you touched on it the right way, is that if you said Teddy, I already explained why he won and why I picked him, but if you also said Teddy, what was the main factor here winning for Haney? And I would say experience. I would say, and that was again one of the things that went into the handicapping. His resume was better. He'd been on a bigger stage more times, and he had fought better fighters.
Yeah.
Not saying that we didn't see the talent in Norman and we couldn't project him as being something there, but we already knew that you're still projecting him. You're still guessing. Haney, we knew. We knew that what he could do at the next level. We knew that he had fought the better fighters, the better resume. And we knew that he was more experienced. And experience matters. Experience, sometimes that's just enough to win.
Yeah.
And the experience of Haney mattered tonight. It showed.
And credit to Bill Haney, Devin Haney's dad. catches a lot of slack out there, but when it comes to protecting his son and managing him, he does a good job. And he saw something. They saw something. They purposely picked Norman, and they showed why tonight. They
Well, that
exploded
was
that.
another part of when I picked Haney to win. I remember, I wrote it in the report. Matter of fact, I remember writing it. I said, you got to remember, if you could deal with this, that, X, O, this, Z, Y. But at the end of the day, I said, Haney asked for this fight.
Yeah.
Haney and his father, they went after him. They picked him up. And when I see a guy who's been successful, like Haney's father, managing his son, and he goes and he asks for a specific guy who's undefeated, who's the world champion, I say, wait a minute. I got to listen to this guy. I got to look at this. I got to think about that. He is seeing something for him to go and make that pick. And that was part of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the final thing I will say is this. Devin Haney was the bigger man. We talked about the debut at 147. He was the bigger man. He was the bigger, stronger man, even inside in the clinch.
It looked like you've been on a weight program, didn't it?
Yeah, for sure, or maybe in part of the poor performance at 140. I think it was actually a catchweight 143 versus Ramirez in his last fight. That he was draining himself too much. That he was losing some of his strength. And by allowing himself to go up to 147 to grow into that frame, maybe this is where he belonged a few fights before this.
Only two things it could be. And I agree. First of all, one thing we know is we saw it. The eye don't lie, right? He looked big. His back, his just big and strong. And we thought Norman would be the bigger guy, being the naturally, the welterweight and the naturally bigger guy, supposedly, right? But to me, I said right away, I think he's been on a weight program in the gym. But then you said, because I got to give you credit, that's why you're upstairs, you're not in the basement.
I got out of the basement.
Yeah. You said that. Maybe it's just that for all these years, he's been crunching the weight. We don't know what kind of cuts he's been making. And maybe he's really been, struggling, whatever, sacrificing, obviously, to make 140. And now he's being allowed to kind of fight at the weight maybe he's meant to be at now, at this stage in his life, rather than cutting down to 140. Either way, he was the bigger guy.
Yeah.